Hey guys, welcome back to the library. We're celebrating 3,500 subs. I honestly never thought I'd get this far, even after 10 years, but here we are. So we're gonna have a special Ask Me Anything session from questions on our Discord and Patreon. Let's get to it. Question 1. Congrats on your sub count, Jason. This is so exciting. My question, pretty bog standard, but I'm curious as someone who's still relatively new to the channel. What would be your 3 Desert Island PS1 games? Meaning they'd be the 3 you'd have to the exclusion of the entire remainder of the library for the rest of your life. I love questions like this, especially when looked at from a different angle. Most folks just ramble off their favorite games, but if we're going to be stuck with only 3 games for the rest of our existence, we have to consider replay value. You would need games that are replayable after the 100th time, and since Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 aren't on the PlayStation, other titles will have to fill the void. After mulling over this one, I can think of 3 games that I could never get tired of, especially since their replay value is off the charts. First and foremost is Street Fighter Alpha 3, which has double the potential for that kind of value. Not just going through the game with each of the 33 characters, but then doing the World Tour mode with each one. Plus, I'd be forced to finally learn the grapplers properly. The second would be NASCAR Rumble. It's the closest the system has to a Burnout type game, with an insane amount of collectibles to discover. The ability to adjust the difficulty separate from the power-up spawn rates means it can be fine-tuned to perfection. Plus, it's a fantastic looking game with all the speed you could need. Since we have a fighting and racing game, a good role-playing game would round out the ranks. That means Vandal Hearts 1. It's a simple compared to the other strategy RPGs, but trying to remember where the hidden armor parts are requires a lot of repeat runs. Plus, the death animation is just absolutely amazing. It never gets old. What's your favorite stress relief game? You know, the type of game, kill everything and leave nothing standing. I'm not very vengeful or angry when it comes to stress. It would feel too empty in that context. When I'm stressed and just trying to unknot myself, I usually go for something a bit more rhythmic and have already played. There's an instant comfort in knowing that you know what's coming, and the repetitive nature of the gameplay allows for a calming mental effect, like slowly breathing in and out. Usually it would be a simple game like Final Fight on Sega CD or Ridge Racer, maybe even Soul Blade on the easiest settings. Juggling combos allow for a nice repetition and pay off as you carry the opponent over the edge. I usually almost always default to a more dumber angle, like Riot Zone on the Turbo Duo. What do you think of the Hori Sindhu pads? I personally have the second one here and really like it. I love the longer handles. I've never used them, but I can vouch for the longer legs handles because the original analog controller, not the DualShock, is the perfect controller. From the longer shoulders, the concave sticks, and softer corners, it just felt perfect. I don't use that many third-party controllers. My top 2 would be the Pad Joystick, which you can watch over here, while I still use to this day, and the Logitech wireless controller. Probably one of the smoothest experiences ever. I realize that once I have the full set, it's going to be different. It's like running into the walls of the Star Trek holodeck. Have you ever felt that way about finally getting the full PS1 set? It's like you've seen all the PS1 has to offer and now the world is a little smaller. Or something. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Never. To rearrange your metaphor, warning, nerd inbound. Assembling the full set was constructing the holodeck. Now I have over 1,200 programs to run on it, and I will never run out of content to find, enjoy, and discuss. Finding developers' long-lost messages, passwords left behind that no one's seen before, playing genres I'd never have played otherwise, etc. The goal was never in the acquiring, it's just the journey. The goal is to play every game, go beyond the surface, and read out every little nugget of joy and info there can be from each platter. That's the true meaning of being a collector. If the focus is just on the purchasing or the value, you're just a focused consumer. Is there a reason why NFL Blitz 2000 Greatest Hits copy is so rare? We were talking about this a while back in the Discord. My theory is based on when the print happened, Midway was waist deep in their financial struggles and eventual bankruptcy. It's likely the shipment of games was lost in the chaos, likely just sitting in their shipping cartons on pallets in some warehouse long forgotten. This theory was updated a few months back when we found the NFL Blitz 1 Greatest Hits variant that now has the newer hologram. It's more likely Midway decided to hedge their bets and ordered some conservative reprint runs in the hopes they could make some quick sales to keep the company afloat. So 2000 GH is likely still chilling in a warehouse, but in smaller numbers with the Blitz 1 GH reprint. If I were a gambling man, I bet there are a few PS2 releases of theirs that have the same situation, just not discovered yet. What PS1 game value are you still constantly baffled by? Expensive games that you wouldn't think would cost that much. Value is something I've never worried about unless it became a misguided factor in how collecting works. Outside processes like grading have completely warped accurate values on all video games and their hardware. This is especially true for social media acceptance and some folks thinking they need to prove something to a world full of strangers. That said, value is only determined by the buyer and the seller of that specific item in that specific transaction. Something I find hilariously overpriced might be within someone else's perfect price range. I might lament or criticize it on reaction, but I'd be lying if there wasn't a little bit of jealousy that someone could afford that. In my entire collecting phase, the most I've ever paid for something was $550, which was my Elemental Gearbolt Assassin's case more than a decade and a half ago. My general rule of thumb for hunting games is that if I can make more than one monthly mortgage payment or buy a piece of plastic, the bank is getting the money. I'm hoping to keep that streak alive going, or at the very least, only break it for something truly unique. Are the OPM sleeves you made still on the website somewhere? Had to look around but couldn't find them. Would you ever go back and revisit those? Touch them up a bit knowing what you now know about graphic design? Yes. They're actually on my archive.org page, which I will link in the video description below. As for remastering them, I'll have to think about it. Considering they have an extremely old website address and a typo or two here and there, maybe it is time for an upgrade. If you'd like to see all new covers made for the official PlayStation demo discs, drop a comment below. I'll see what I can do. What is your first memory of any video game at all? Great question. This would have been likely a Pong clone or a pinball machine. I have vivid memories of being in my grandpa's bar and staring up at two pinball machines. I think one of them was Gorgar. It's the closest art I can find to what my memory tells me was what I saw. I remember being terrified of the demon creature. Eventually, I'd be tall enough to play an arcade game like Pac-Man. What is your first memory of playing a video game, if one is not included in that? If we're talking at home, that would have been the Atari 2600. I had played Pac-Man in the arcade enough to recognize the name and the characters on screen, and my father came home with the system. I can remember shrieking and going, "I'm so good at this game!" My father set up the system, handed me the joystick, and I proceeded to die within 1 second of the game starting. "I thought you said you were good at this," he joked. And the rest is history. What is the angriest you've ever been at a game? My wife could share a few laughs of me quietly quitting a lot of games, usually the ones when I am playing on the hardest difficulty just to say I did it, or to snag an achievement. The absolute angriest I have ever been would be two very specific instances. I honestly don't recall which games I was playing, but I do remember my reaction to them. The first game got me so angry that I reached out for the disc, but instead grabbed a blank CDR on my desk and just mauled it to pieces. I snapped it in half, snapped it again, and then just kept folding it up and down just to see the wear and tear. The other time I got so wound up, I was mid-arc throwing the controller and stopped myself. I then grabbed all the pillows and blankets off my bed, made a giant target out of them, and then threw the controller into that. It softly bounced off and rested safely on the bed, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't leave a permanent dent in that pillow I hit. Now that I'm almost 50, I just pause, put the system in rest mode, and come back later. What is your best favorite use of a peripheral? As someone joked in the Discord, Zixeed is now likely up there with all the work I've been doing with it. I do enjoy it when companies take the time to make use of them in neat ways, like knowing Time Crisis could use any controller as the foot pedal, including the actual pedals from a racing controller. It made the experience that much more arcade-like. Also, Konami allowing you to gain early access to the Justifier in Silent Hill by plugging in the real Justifier into controller port 2 is always a hoot. Using the CD themselves in the games like Monster Rancher and VibRibbon is fantastic as well. Since people love to speculate about the Nintendo PlayStation Super Disc system, why don't you see more about the rumored PSX RAM expansion or upgraded console that was widely rumored and often assumed to be imminently announced by gaming magazines in 1997 or so? EGM was so confident about this device around the time of Tekken 3's development that they discussed it as fact, but here we are in 2025 and there's almost no real info about this device or devices. Is it just because there has never been any engineering samples or prototypes found? I can think of two reasons why it never came to be. One would be that Sony killed it based on the Sega CD and the 32X, and then their issues with Nintendo. Add-ons were the death knell of a system back in the day, and with the Sega Saturn struggling out of the gate, Sony probably realized there was no need since they had no competition. Second, if it was planned to be shipped in June of 1997, working backward from a development standpoint, it would run parallel with the PS2's early dev planning. The idea of splitting their customer base across two compatibility issues with plain and Type-C discs, like the Turbo Duo Super CD and CD2 discs, right before a major sequel system was likely frowned upon. Technically, this concept just evolved into the CD and DVD compatibility of the PS2. Devs could use the CD-ROMs for the smaller games, and then the DVDs for the much larger beasts. I doubt it got any further than napkin stage planning. That, or was just completely made up. Well, hell, let's just ask. Favorite or most memorable memory card icon? Kinda random question, I know. Coming from you, Sean? That's not random. I don't think I have a specific PS1 memory card icon I love, but I always enjoy the ones that change as progress is made or have a different icon for each slot used. My all-time favorite icon is actually Ridge Racer 5's on the PS2. Watching the car flip over and cry if you tried to delete it made me laugh the first time I saw it. It was so cute. What stereotypically childlike game do you quite enjoy for the PS1? Nothing like Spyro, I'm talking like Elmo's Letter Adventure type stuff. I haven't played enough of them to form a valid opinion, but there actually are some good ones out there. If it weren't for the terrible load times, Barbie Detective was actually a really good game. Barbie Explorer is also a very Crash Bandicoot-like game. It's honestly not that bad. What is the happiest gaming moment you've ever had? Likely more the funniest, that turned out to be the happiest. I was on a first date enjoying a real-world bowling and deep dish pizza, except I forgot my lactose pills as I am lactose intolerant. Thinking my date and I would just go our separate ways after dinner and I could race home to face the toilet trials alone, she instead asked if we could go hang out at my place and play some games. Of course, I said yes, but my fear of knowing what was coming terrified me. Right on schedule, we were in the middle of a competitive Wii bowling session when I felt the pain. If you've never been lactose intolerant, trying to process it is like having a spike and barbed wire wrapped spear shoved into both sides of your hip, then having them twisted slowly back and forth as you feel all the hydration leave your body. The bigger problem, especially at this moment, was that I could feel the gas bomb building in my stomach. I quickly excused myself to the bathroom, which regretfully was only just about 10 feet from where we were playing, and the walls were particularly thin. No matter how hard I tried to contain it, my body gave up the race. The noise that came out of my behind can only be described as a cow reacting to getting stabbed, then thrown off a cliff while spitting, and then landing several times in the water below. It was the loudest, strongest, wall-shaking fart I had ever unleashed on this mortal coil, and a shopping cart's worth of poop came with it. I sat there for the longest 30 seconds of my life, waiting for the sounds of a woman's panicked scream and footsteps flying past the bathroom, down the 2 flights of stairs, and out the front door, never to be seen again. Instead, after 30 seconds of silence, I heard the deepest, loudest, most heartfelt belly laugh across the room. I finished my crime, washed up, and walked out to see my date in tears from laughing so hard. After explaining what happened and letting her know it always came in threes, we went back to Wii bowling and waited out my nightmare. The process repeated itself 2 more times, the laughter and joking followed, and the rest of the night went on as normal. We've been together 18 years. Alright guys, that's all the questions from the Discord and Patreon. There are some really good questions in here, and I love talking to you guys about it. If you guys ever need me, I'm in the comment section below or on Discord, Twitter, Facebook. Come find me. I'll see you guys next episode. Take care.